Hi, my name is Robert Marin. I'm the president of Military Aircraft Parts. I've been an aerospace engineer for 18 years. I did my undergraduate and graduate work at California State University, Sacramento and Long Beach, and I'm currently a doctoral student in unmanned systems engineering, midway through that. So that's what I'm about. I'm here to discuss contract SPM4A7-11-M-T291, the first article rejection rebuttal, and go over what the government found in their results dated February 6, 2014, that I notated in my response to them. In the first section, we've talked about items 1, 4, 6, and 7, the dimensional inspection. Doesn't meet the requirements. Our inspection was done using CMM, and we had two inspectors, each individually approve the dimensional requirements, and they have passing results. We may have the CMM printout someplace. I would have to work to locate those, but I've given kind of limited time to provide this, so that's what I have. Additionally, we have these other fixtures that were used to weld the items, and so we should have repeatable results. This is what I'm recommending as the best way to provide repeatable, accurate results for the government. This one doesn't fit in the fixture because after welding it no longer fits in there, but areas were not welded. It was mostly welded, and then it should be repeatable. And again, these fixtures were all checked with the CMM and were compliant with the dimensional requirements. So that's why we measure these parts and do not come up with the results the government has found. Additionally, these items are coated in foam, so we don't understand exactly how the government was able to hold these parts with this soft foam and get repeatable, accurate results if you're using the outside diameter, or how you're supposed to hold this to get the measurements that you did. We, of course, inspected these before the foam was applied, and we believe the results that we got were acceptable. So these are the two submissions that we made to the government. They've been returned to us. This is the first one and the second one. Both were done using the fixtures that you see in front of us, and both passed dimensional inspection. So that's what we have for the first four, items 1, 4, 6, and 7. Items 2 and 5, welding. In those items, the inspection of the weld was submitted. Our parts that we have done have no evidence of gaps in the weld. We don't know what a weld seam is. This was not a seam welded assembly, but all the parts that we have very complete welds in them, no gaps whatsoever, as well as they were pressure tested and showed absolutely no leaks whatsoever. So when they say, the government says that there are leaks in the gaps in the weld, we don't know what they're talking about. There are areas that do not have burn through. That's a different term. So we wonder if the government is using the wrong terms and not understanding that what an incomplete gap in the weld is and what burn through is. There is no requirement in the FPS requirement for burn through to be all around the part. So we again think that there's some issue with the government's understanding of what the welding process is and what the terms are used for welding, and applying the correct rejection criteria for the weld quality. Number 3, ambiguous specification, the 4-inch dimension. In this drawing, there's this 4-inch true. We believe that the 4-inch true is the dimension to use to define how to manufacture this length of tube. But the government has found that it applies to this section of the tape also. However, we believe that if it was intended to apply to tape, it would not have this leader, this dimensional line here, and it would additionally go right here, have this line. So without that information, the government is adding requirements. Furthermore, this one piece of tape right here that does not go the full 4 inches long, it only goes 1 inch, it was submitted on both the first submission, in which they said did not mention this was a problem, and the second submission. You'll see it's also 2 inches long from here to here, instead of the 4 inches the government is requiring. So when they failed to tell us that it was a 4-inch requirement on the first submission, and we didn't change for the second one, we feel it's inappropriate to reject it for failure to comply with the 4-inch dimension, and because of the errors in the drawing and the unclear specific call out for that. And the last one are numbers 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. In those, the government is asking us to maintain the original machined requirements for these flanges, their diameters after weld. There is no requirement for after weld dimension on this drawing, so we feel that's not appropriate to require that. I'm going to enclose an example of a weld requirement that shows dimensional after weld requirements. This drawing does not have one, but I'm going to enclose an example of a different drawing the government has required us to have after weld flange dimensions held to a tight tolerance. Anyway, we have manufactured to date at least 14 different NSNs for similar F-16 parts, and I'll attach a list, all of which are either made of aluminum or stainless steel, most from aluminum, and almost all of these have flanges on them, and many of them have them from the same manufacturer. None of them have this problem. So out of the 14 NSNs that have been approved by the government with no returns or quality issues ever, we have never had to comply with the dimensional requirements for flanges after welding. So for this dimensional requirement to come up after is very difficult to us to understand, or it may be impossible for us to comply with, because the nature of welding distorts the flange slightly. So we believe that's an additional requirement that does not apply to the finished drawing, because there is no after weld dimensional requirement on here. And there has not been for the 14 different similar parts that we manufactured in the past. So that's all I have. My email is rob@militaryaircraftparts.com. My phone number is 916-635-8010, extension 100. And again, my name is Robert Marin at Military Aircraft Parts. And this is regarding the NSN on this duct assembly is 1660-01-066-3198. Thank you.